Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Beat Your Addiction podcast with John Giordano. I'm your co-host, Scott Jones. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope everybody is doing great. We're in hurricane season down here in Florida. We got a lot going on, and everybody's kind of battening down the hatches and getting ready for craziness. But I hope everybody out there, if you are Florida people, I hope you're all safe with this storm coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Please listen to your local authorities. John and I both work with police and fire and everybody else. And if they tell you to move, get your ass out of the house, please do that. Don't sit and think you're going to be a hero, because you're going to put a first responder at risk, because they're going to have to try to save you.
Not unless you're like floating.
Yeah, that's true.
The water.
That's true. So let's jump into the show. We got a great guest from Canada, but before we introduce him, I want to remind you, this is your job. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the like button, and certainly leave a comment. Those comments, we need those. It helps us build viewership, and share it with your friends. And if you don't like it, share it with your friends you don't like. Just as long as you're sharing, we're good with it.
Well, it's information that you can utilize for your recovery, for your life. You don't even have to be in addiction and mental health. And that's what we do. We get some experts on here besides ourselves, and we share this information with you that it's not common knowledge. So you may want to share this with people that need help.
That's right.
This show is based on helping God's kids, and that's what we do. So help us out.
John, it's not getting better out there, people. That we need. We're not winning the battle, and the reason we're not winning the battle is because there's not enough people involved, and we need you involved.
Well,
learn about addiction, learn about mental health, learn about what you can do. Right?
I laugh, and I didn't laugh, and I'm seeing this as on the news that people that are ODing went down. I don't know if they meant they fell down, because it didn't go down.
John, if it's one person ODing, is too many. Dropping from 30,000 to 29,000 is not a good number. We need to do better.
That's
we need
right.
to do
and
better.
That's what these programs are all about.
That's right. And today we're going to be digging into something kind of cool. We've touched on this before about how martial arts kind of play into mental health and wellness and everything else. Now we got a guy who really kind of works with this stuff, and it's really cool. This is Eric Fisher. He's coming to us from Calgary. That's in Canada. That's with the mooses and the. Is it mooses or mises?
I have no idea. I went to Canada. I don't even know where I was.
You did?
All I said was Canada. I'm there. Yeah. All right, let's get moving.
I love Canada. All right, let's bring Eric Fisher, and he's probably backstage laughing at us. Eric, how are you?
Yes, I was laughing. Yeah, I'm doing okay. How are you guys doing?
Okay. So if you have more than one moose, how do you say it?
I don't even know, and I've been up here over 10 years.
You don't even know where he is either.
It might be like deer, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
He thought he was going to Seattle.
How about this? He thought he went to Canada.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
You are a Canadian certified counselor? Is that how it is?
I am. That's what they tell me. Yes.
Okay, Canadian certified counselor. You have your own counseling business, and you help people. But, you and John got a lot in common. We talked before we came on the show. You guys got a lot in common, a lot of things you do, which is always fun when we find somebody who's
Absolutely.
Which it's hard to find a mind to like John's anywhere, because
I'm still trying to find my mind. What are you talking about?
But why don't you tell us a little bit about, just to get us started, then you guys could take off on whatever you want to talk about. But, why did you go into this business? Why are you helping people with this? Is this a drive that you've always had?
Yeah, first off, I just want to say I'm very humbled by John's experience and what he mentioned as far as how long he's been in the martial arts and the work that he does in mental health and addiction. So thanks, Scott and John, for having me on the show. Yeah, you're welcome. So as far as getting into this type of field, there is some mental illness addiction that is in my family on a certain side. So that's something that I saw a little bit growing up. And that's something that's always been of interest to me. But after getting a bachelor's in psychology, I was like, well, I can't do too much with this. What's the next step? And counseling had always been something that was of interest to me. And so took the next step and sink or swim, doing it over 14 years later. And so I just really appreciate being able to walk with people and see that empowerment and be a vessel, be a part of someone's transformation, their shifts that they can see inside of them.
That's the 14 years. 14. Keep it up, brother. Keep it up. But you guys got a lot of similarities in how you work with people and stuff.
Right.
So
why don't you tell us about a little bit about your process and
Process.
And how you come to be with that process, because that's a process also.
The process with the therapy, or
Yeah, the therapy or your approach, or
yeah. So I mean, I meet people where they're at. I'm not a glorified expert, nor am I a glorified cheerleader. I want to be able to collaborate with somebody and just see where are the pain points at. What are their strengths as well? That's part of my process as well. I don't want to just focus on, especially when it comes to addiction work, I don't want to focus on just, I mean, all the negative pieces that someone's experiencing. That's a part of it. But what are the strengths that I can use to help them with the guilt, the shame, regret, whatever it is that they're experiencing? And so, yeah, I do an intake, I do an assessment, I get goals formulated, then I work on those goals, but I'm flexible with that as well during sessions. Something comes up between sessions that's not goal oriented, let's talk about it. So that's a little bit about how I work.
Well, I give you another angle that you may want to consider looking at. We're always looking at talking to the brain instead of dealing with the body. And the body's connected to the head. And most of the therapists, they just talk to the head. And what we forget is that this is an integrated system. And what that means is there are medical conditions that are co-contributing factors to depression and anxiety. And I talk about this all the time, doing my best to get that message out to therapists, to people. If you have a low thyroid, you're going to have depression and anxiety, possibly. You have high testosterone, low testosterone, depression and anxiety, leaky gut syndrome, H. pylori infection, hypoglycemia, clothed injuries, heavy metal toxicity causes interruption in neurotransmission. So we have all those things that we do not, and we are not trained to look at. And that is the problem. We're only treating part of the addiction and mental health situation. There's vitamin deficiencies, all of this stuff. And this is all science. So I always tell people, please do not believe a word I tell you. Go look it up. And these things are co-contributing factors to depression and anxiety, which drives addiction and mental health.
Indeed. Yeah.
So I'm just throwing that out there for you. And but tell us about your book.
Yeah, and I just want to say, John, I mean, the biological is so understated. Even when I started doing counseling, that was not something I was looking as much. It was more about the head for me too. And I've come to see the importance of looking holistically at the body as well. And I'm still learning for sure different parts with that, the contributing factors that can be medical. With the book, yeah, it's been out since March. I had a lot of doubt when I was writing it. I had to deal with that. Someone going to read it? Are they going to appreciate it? Are they going to understand it? All that crap. And so I was able to publish that back in March of this year. March or May, I forget now. It's been a few months. Anyway, so it's all about the intersection of martial arts concepts and techniques with addiction recovery and mental health treatment, primarily mental health related for trauma, anxiety, and depression. And so I kind of go through like a white belt to a black belt of 66 different techniques and how they correspond to addiction recovery. Like the first one was
jealous. I didn't think about that myself.
I know.
I love what you're doing.
Well, I have to give credence to Eric and Kevin Lampkin out of Kentucky, because without their manuals, I would not have been able to see the nuances and the details, the information that I could use to translate over to addiction recovery and for mental health treatment. So kudos to them for sure for that.
I got to put you in touch with my friend, Dr. Eric Resnick, Martial Arts Therapeutics. It's a national organization.
Please.
He teaches people about how to incorporate martial arts and therapy together.
As somebody who's not in the martial arts myself, I'm listening to this and it sounds pretty cool. And I mean, I think most of the world knows that martial arts is much mental and spiritual as it is physical. But can you give us some examples of how using martial arts can help with trauma or addiction or any of these issues?
Sure. Well, just going through my own personal experiences, like even going to martial arts tournaments, I had a lot of anxiety. Like I did not like going to tournaments. I didn't like doing the katas and the sparring in front of people. So what I learned through those experiences is the importance of self-respect, self-control, self-compassion. A big piece is the assertiveness part when it came to sparring. So for me, it's all about balance, different types of balance. Balance when it comes to form, balance when it comes to doing different techniques, body weight, all that's incorporated with martial arts. And so we could just talk about balance really for the rest of the time. So there's all these different concepts I was able to pick up on when I was doing the martial arts, and now I implement those when I'm working with folks. I use them for my own self, especially when it comes to the self-control piece. And, you know, practicing techniques, I can't hit somebody in the face. I mean, I can, but it's frowned upon. So, you know, I'm able to have that self-control where I don't, if we're practicing something, I don't go above and beyond what I need to. So yeah, there's a lot of different concepts there that we could talk about.
John, I'm sure this makes sense to you, right?
Yeah, well, you know what the martial arts also does is you face your fears,
Mm-hmm.
and that becomes very empowering also, because and also dropping off your ego. When a guy comes into a dojo, he's actually saying, "Hey, man, my man who's at the door, please teach me how to defend myself." So now it's an ego thing that's, you know, that you get rid of it, but then they reconstitute the ego once they think they're really cool until they get knocked around a little bit. Then that ego goes back to
I was fighting a 14-year-old silver glove boxer. He had that title. We were sparring, and I was, I think, 17 at the time, and he was knocking me left, right, sideways. I wasn't used to the boxing element fighting, the way he was moving in and out. And yes, that was very humbling. had to leave the ego at the door. And
when did you start your martial art training?
I was around 10 years old, so that would have been back in
what year?
94 or so.
19 what?
94.
Okay, so let me give you a little background here. Karate martial arts has changed dramatically. You go to the tournament, it looks like acrobatics. It's not even what I know to be martial arts. I started in 1962, judo, jiu-jitsu, and karate, and it was completely different than it is today. And even in the 90s, I think in the 80s, that's when it started to change. When it became, you know, we didn't have equipment, number one, when we were fighting. We didn't have helmets or gloves. Or, we didn't have anything.
That explains a lot, John.
So,
all those bumps on the head. Okay.
Yeah. Right. That's why you get all the bumps. And what we called light contact, they called it. Okay. Now, what light is to you and to me may be completely different. The guys used to get banged around pretty good. So, you know, I look at the full contact stuff. It was almost like full contact, to be honest with you.
Right.
And then all that changed when they brought on the equipment and all this other kind of stuff. But and then a lot of the respect and the backbone of the martial arts kind of left. Okay, we Americanized it so much is where it just turned into poo-poo, as I would say it. Martial arts is something that you have spirituality, you have Buddha, you have, you know, that where some of this stuff does not work in the streets the way they do it today.
Right.
You know, and it's not about fighting; it's about not fighting. What people don't understand. It's about learning about yourself and becoming the best version of yourself.
A big part of discipline is in there too, right? Is discipline a huge piece?
Absolutely. And, you know, and patience and facing your fears. There's a lot more to the martial arts than most people realize when you learn it from a traditional martial artist that is focused on creating a better version of the person they're teaching.
Eric, are you encouraging people to get involved in the arts as well, or is it just about following principles of martial arts?
I would invite both. Yeah, if they want to get involved, absolutely. For children, especially those with maybe ADHD, movement is essential, and so I would say yes, if they can, that'd be awesome. But of course, yeah, there is the principles as you guys talked about with discipline with thoughts, with emotions, behaviors, just the choices that I make. Really, mindfulness is a big part of martial arts.
Exactly. How to focus your mind. Exactly.
Yeah. So absolutely.
Well, I know years ago, John, you brought that into G&G, the treatment center you started, and that was a big part of it too.
Yeah,
right?
I use martial arts as a way of them fighting their disease.
Awesome.
And not giving up.
Yeah.
You know, when they were doing the workouts, let's say they were doing push-ups and they wanted to stop. I said, no, you keep going until you can't do it anymore.
Yeah, going to
fortitude, that attitude of keep going, and explaining to them when they lost in a fight, okay, or they didn't do so well in a form. I said, there are no failures. Those are only lessons, how you can improve yourself. So you have to have a different mindset. And it's the mindset, I think that's what you're promoting, is that mindset is what makes the difference in how you look at life and yourself.
Yep. The mindset and how I view the opponent, otherwise known as addiction.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, there's something else you guys have in common, which is you both have worked with kind of variants of EMDR, developed by others or developed by yourselves. Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about what EMDR is and then what you're doing with your rapid therapy?
Yeah, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Been doing it for a few years now. I don't think as long as John has. I got trained online.
Well, I'm as old as dirt, so don't worry about
Yeah. Yeah, I used it once for someone they were having certain thoughts regarding a child of theirs that they did not want to have. And it was causing a lot of overwhelming experiences for them, and cleared those thoughts, those sensations, what was happening in the body that was negative, self-defeating up. So I've been using it a lot for like anxiety and depression. Trauma is probably the main one, whether that's complex trauma or like an event of trauma. So yeah, I'm still learning about it. I mean, the training was great, but there's so much to learn with that therapy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I teach people that come out of EMDR, and I show them things that EMDR it's distraction, and what it does is it puts kind of like a glass in between the event and the emotions, and so you're looking at it intellectually, so you don't have that feeling of that the anxiety anymore. But a lot of EMDR people really don't know how to do it too well, unfortunately, because only the eyes move. Now, when people are stressed out, they stop moving their fingers, they start holding their breath, they start tightening their lips, they stop moving their head. Any of that happens, it diminishes the effect of the technique that you're doing. And EMDR works on right, left hemisphere of the brain, and that's why you move bilateral. And so you have to be very cognizant of them doing those things to distract themselves in a different way, so it minimizes your effect. Most people don't realize that, and you got to really be aware of them moving, holding their breath, tightening their lips. And then I found something out which is really interesting, that the adult tries to protect the child inside. Everybody has an inner child. And if you don't talk to the inner child and you just talk to the adult, you're not going to get that far, especially if they're protecting it. So that I talk to the kid, not just the guy in front of me. So you might want to consider looking at that.
Yeah, the inner child work is really important. I haven't done it a lot with EMDR. I think that with cognitive interweaves with EMDR, which is kind of like an intervention if someone's having some trouble during the process, the protocol, that inner child piece could be implemented. But yeah, the inner child, the adapted child is the one that tries to use all these different techniques that are kind of working, kind of not working, until they find that wise adult self. That's a journey for everybody. So yeah, thanks for that, John.
It's really a cool technique that's unbelievable. What people don't understand, I have to explain everything to them, when you move your hands in front of their eyes in different patterns, and they go, "What are you doing? What is that? I don't understand how that can work." And what I explain to them is that what happens with this, when you go from right and left hemisphere of the brain, you start to release certain chemicals in the brain, and these thoughts are in different quadrants in the brain. So trauma is a closed loop, and what you want to do is open that loop, so they don't keep on regurgitating the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I do it with the holotropic breathing and bringing the motion into the body, okay, so they can see that it takes form, not just the thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're doing is wonderful. I love what you're doing with the martial arts. Take us through a little a conversation about when you talk to somebody about what are the steps that you do with the martial arts and how you coordinate that into your mental health process.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just starting with the basic concepts, looking at discipline, which can be used with, if that's cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever it is, looking at boundaries as well. And that can correspond with the martial arts also around. Well, like you mentioned, John, it's not just it's not about offense. It's about defense. It's about being able to protect myself and not seeking out a fight. We call those people bullies. So being able to look at the self-respect aspect as well is a big part that goes along with discipline. Looking at balance. But the balance between being and doing, I think, is important for anybody with mental health. I'm not just do, but I'm also finding those times where I can just be. I'm not doing too much. Maybe I'm doing an activity, a leisure activity that's not too strenuous. So finding the balance with that, the balance between restricting and binging, even with spirituality, like you guys brought up earlier with spirituality. So that's a big part of it too, where I don't restrict myself from spirituality, which otherwise known as freedom, getting my humanity back, meaning, purpose, values, all of that. But also I don't binge on it either. And I'm like, oh, well, just going to pray about it and not do any action, and I'll be good. So I think just looking at those different balances is what I will talk about. And I mean, just going into one of the techniques, the first technique in the book is thundering uncertainty. And so it comes from thundering hammers, the martial art technique. That's the translation. So I talk about uncertainty. How can we actually apply what we're learning to uncertainty? How can uncertainty work for me rather than against me? What can this teach me with what I'm going through with this uncertainty? So those are a few of the pieces as far as the process.
Well, self-defense is common sense. And, and
Yeah.
you look at that and you can apply that to anything. You can apply that to situations. You can apply that to physical situations, spiritual, mental, all of that. And knowledge is power, but without action is worthless.
Yeah.
So we have to look at the whole enchilada here.
Yeah.
When dealing with that, and I love that you're utilizing the martial arts and combined with the EMDR and all the other things that you're doing, is that it's a holism, a comprehensive approach, a holistic approach, and that's what we need. We need to integrate all of these modalities together instead of just using one narrow view of the world. And we need a broader view of the world in order to address people and taking them where they are, not where we want them to be. So I think you're doing a great job with that. I love your approach.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. I mean, with people, it's kind of like I can change my conclusions to fit my data, or I can change my data to fit my conclusions. And when it comes to people, I might need to change my conclusions about what I think this person needs, not just change the data about what I think they need. And that's where, I mean, you're bang on. Like, holistic approach is definitely the way to go. I can't just wholly do CBT or whatever approach for every single person, because people are broad. We're complex. We have so many layers, and I continue to be learned. I continue to be educated when I'm working with folks.
Well, if what I always tell people, if you want to be a good teacher, you have to first be a good student.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and the bottom line is this: I'm still learning. Thank God. I have a very big thirst for knowledge. I do all kinds of stuff, and working with God's kids, you have to realize that it's kind of difficult sometimes. That people try to, sometimes therapists look at their view of the world and think people should fit into that view. They don't understand sometimes that people come from different walks of life, different cultures, different situations growing up. So you have to see where they're at and what's the best version they can become of themselves, instead of trying to put them in a little box where you think it should be. Yeah. Sometimes that happens because we have our own biases. And it's very difficult to stay neutral and see how that all plays out for them. And the bottom line is what people really want, I believe, is to be loved. They want to be wanted. They want to be understood. They want to feel connected to themselves and to the world around them. And relationships is so important. But the first primary relationship is with themselves. And that's what you're going to be doing, and that's what I do, and that's what therapists supposed to do. Get them in rapport with themselves so they can be in rapport with other people.
Mm-hmm. I want to make sure we get to some points before we run out of time here. First, your book. What is the title of your book again?
The Martial Art Recovery Self-Mastery Practices to Subdue Addiction and Achieve Mental Wellness.
Okay.
I love that.
He put a paragraph on the front of the book.
I didn't think about that.
I know. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. But what does this? Is this like a manual, like something that you would use yourself for self-help? Is it more of an informational thing? What does it read like? Is it a text?
It's a bit of a manifesto. It is a manual. Like, I will give actionable items for each of those 66 techniques and some questions for people to journal about, either through audio, talking to their phone, or writing it down, or whatever they want to do. So yeah, it's definitely a manual. That could be a word it could be used as. And so I go into the biopsychosocial spiritual. I go into the importance of spirituality. It's called Spirituality Unmasked. I go into this social piece. I go into what's called the biodome, which is all about biology, which was one of the more challenging chapters, because, as John pointed out earlier, something that counselors don't know a lot about. So I was able to get 2 contributors in that chapter, and also looking at the psychological, the internal world when it comes to thoughts. So yeah, it is definitely a way. It is a blueprint. It can be one of many blueprints. There's more than one path to the garden when it comes to any type of healing for somebody.
That's excellent. And so is that available on Amazon?
Amazon, Apple, books, yeah, different places.
Okay. And then you also have your website. I want to make sure people get a chance to check that out. Give us your website, please.
recoveryartscounseling.com, and that's with 2 L's, since I'm up here in Canada. I've had to convert to the 2 L's. Yeah.
Counseling is spelled with 2 L's in Canada?
Yeah, it is.
That's wrong. That's just wrong.
I know. It's blasphemous, I tell you. So
they're probably running from a moose while they were writing it. That's what happened.
No, what happened is they stuttered.
They stuttered. They stuttered, and they just said, "Oh, that must be what it is." Okay. Okay. So again, it is Recovery Arts Counseling with 2 L's.com. What are people going to see when they go to your website? Or more importantly, who are the people who you can help? What kind of people should reach out to you?
Anybody that's looking for any healing for themselves. And I am working in a multicultural field now, not as much as when I was in the States. I'm working with people from different countries, different minorities, different backgrounds. Really anybody that's looking for some support. So I work primarily with trauma, addiction, depression, anxiety, stress, relationship concerns, grief, and ADHD.
What do you work with kids or teens at all?
I don't work with a lot of kids. I think the youngest was 12, but yeah, usually 14 and up I'm okay with. Yeah.
Well, that's a different animal. We all know that. When you're dealing with kids,
their brains are
under
sort of,
12 or 13 or 14, if they're below that, that's a different animal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It all depends where you are, what group of kids you're dealing with. Because, I worked in Liberty City and Overtown. That's our African American community, and that's one culture. And then I work with Russians. That's a whole other culture.
Yeah.
And then Latins is another type of culture. I mean,
oh yeah,
different cultural norms that when you work with them, you have to understand that culture. Otherwise, you try to you mix your culture in with theirs. It's just like when I used to teach the blind and the handicapped martial arts, and one of my students became a national karate champion for forms. And when I started teaching him, I couldn't teach him with my eyes sighted because his eyes weren't sighted. His reference points were completely different than mine. So I had to blindfold myself in order to teach him.
Wow.
And that's how I taught him. So you have to go and be inside that other culture. And you have to understand where people are coming from, not where you're coming from. Okay, because your reference points are going to be completely different than theirs.
Absolutely. And John got past all the lawsuits of the people he punched while he was blindfolded.
Right.
There was the guy at the bus stop. There was the started swinging. No, that's brilliant. And I've always been impressed with John's career, and I am super impressed, as John is, with what you've done with taking something that has so many great therapeutic applications, like martial arts, all those therapy, and you're putting it into a program that kind of works, and that's awesome. Please get his book. It's got actionable intel in there. I like that too, because a lot of people write a book and it's a book, but you're putting things in there where you can actually work on things while you're reading this book, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's great. Actionable intel. Guys, we're coming up against it.
All right.
That was fast, wasn't it?
It seemed fast. That's a good thing, usually.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now,
You mean we just had a podcast?
yeah, with the now we're going to try it with the mic.
So fast, I didn't even know we had a podcast. Wait a while, what's going on?
Now we're going to try it with the mic on. Do you work with people from the States, or is it strictly in Canada?
It's strictly in Canada right now. I haven't really worked with anybody in the
Do you
States
do Zoom
in a while.
or anything like that, or you just do it? Well, you can't do EMDR with Zoom, but you know.
With EMDR, I use what's called bilateral base, and it does have like a little ball that goes across the screen. It's pretty effective, but of course, I have to have make sure they're stabilized.
Yeah.
happens.
Otherwise, you can take them down a different road.
Yeah.
No way to stop them if they're 3 hours from you. So people could check it out, but certainly if they have any questions, they can go to your website. They can ask you questions and learn more about your books and stuff like that too, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I can work with people in the States, and it would be virtual, like Zoom, like John said. But yeah, check me out. I got a blog. I got a few articles. Yeah.
Well, if you want, you can go to my website. I'm a co-owner of JC's Recovery Center. It's a faith-based program where we also incorporate wellness and faith, non-denominational, not spirituality, not religion. And you can get my books if you want. The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never Gave Up. It's my life story. And also How to Beat Your Addictions and Live a Quality Life. And the way I wrote it was I interviewed about 200 addicts, alcoholics, eating disorders, gamblers. I wanted to know what they did for their recovery, not just quitting the substance or behaviors. And they had long-term recovery. And then I interviewed 150 chronic relapsers, and I put all that stuff into the book. Then I put my own stuff in the book and some of the research papers, because I'm currently in over 80 medical and scientific peer-reviewed journals, because nobody listens to the Kid from the South Bronx, I guess.
It's okay. I've been on over 80 police blotters, so that's pretty similar too.
Right. So they know who we are.
That's awesome.
If you want, go there and you can get some more information, maybe to grow your accounts and see if you like it, whatever, keep what you like and throw away the rest and go from there.
That's it. Yeah. I always tell people, you can be as skeptical as you want about EMDR or whatever it is, but as long as you're curious.
That's right.
That's
You got it.
Absolutely.
Stay curious.
So,
okay, Scotty.
People, to learn more about Eric Fisher and the work that he's doing, go to recoveryartscounseling.com. Remember, the counseling has 2 L's. And also check out his books and all his information. It's right there on his website. And Eric, we can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day to join us.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Scott. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. And as always, people, check out johnjgiordano.com if you want to know more information about John, the books that he's written, the papers he's been posting, and all of the great work that he's been doing. It's right there on the website. johnjgiordano.com. The J is just the letter J, not spelled out. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us right here on Beat Your Addiction. For our guest, Eric Fisher, for John Giordano, I'm your co-host, Scott Jones. We will catch you next time.
See you later, alligator.